Also want to talk about, share some thoughts on, the upcoming Stanley Cup Finals. What are some things to keep an eye on as we try to bring the pieces together? There was one really interesting thing I did not talk about with the death of Johnny Gaudreau that happened back on August 29th. So I want to touch on that and try to bring it all together as we are now over a month into the NHL season. So the Jets, they make history. They become the first team to win 15 of their first 16 games. Of course, they get to 15-1, and it became pretty clear once they were 12, 13-1, they were going to be 15-1. And of course, in the language of gematria, Winnipeg Jets is 151, a lot like 15-1, which is the 36 prime number, like how they win the game 3-6. Now, I'm going to show you what this has to do with Johnny Gaudreau and the Stanley Cup here. So Gaudreau, look at his birthday. His birthday is August 13th, right? And he wears the number 13. Now, the Jets made their history on November 9th, right? Against the Dallas Stars. They got their 14th win in 15 games, and of course, Stars is 14 in the most pure cipher. And they win the game 4-1, like how Dallas is 41, and 41's the 13th prime number, and Dallas is 13. Johnny Gaudreau wore the number 13. But what's interesting about this is, and I touched a little bit on this if you watched the video I put out on the Stanley Cup last year with the Florida Panthers winning it, which really was kind of a foregone conclusion that Donald Trump was going to win the presidency again. And now notice, we could talk about all of these numbers, but I'm only going to mention a couple here real fast. We know Winnipeg Jets is 65 like Johnny Gaudreau. I don't think Winnipeg's going to the Stanley Cup. We see this every year with these record-breaking teams in the NHL. They never win the Stanley Cup. Winnipeg, small Canadian market, it's not going to happen. Dallas, on the other hand, the Stars, again, Winnipeg played Dallas in this game, and we know Dallas is right there. People are going to look at probably Dallas, Colorado, and Edmonton in the Western Conference as being the three teams most people are going to pick to represent the West. I'd probably be surprised if it's anybody else. I mean, obviously, as the season progresses, narratives could change. But those are probably the three most likely teams. Now, what's so interesting about Dallas is the fact that this year is the 166th time that the Stanley Cup will be awarded. It's the 108th season of the NHL, but it's the 166th time the Stanley Cup will be awarded. So now we know Florida Panthers is 166, right? And that was part of why we knew when the Stanley Cup was set, why it was going to be Florida over Edmonton. But the interesting thing about it is that this year, Florida, I mean, obviously they're a team that, they could very well repeat. But 214 is the Dallas area code. Okay, 214 is the Dallas area code, and 214 is the 166th composite number. Now, does that mean the Stars win it? It's possible. But notice how from the date the Jets were established, they were established as the Atlanta Thrashers, and they moved to Winnipeg. The original Winnipeg Jets went to Phoenix and now play in Utah. But the thing about it is they were established on June 25th, 97, right? Which means it was 137 days after their establishment, or the 138th day. And we know that's Johnny Gaudreau's birthday, 13/8 or 8/13, depending on where you are in the world. Now, August 13th, his birthday, that's the day leaving 140 days left in the year. If Dallas makes the Stanley Cup this year, they would have their 140th. They would get their 140th playoff win. Likewise, if Tampa Bay makes the Stanley Cup, they would get their 136th playoff win. And if they won it all, they would get their 140th. And it kind of makes me feel, I feel like in my gut, like Tampa has ran their course. They failed to get out of the first round the last couple of years. It kind of feels like they're not rebuilding, but they're in like that bit of a retool type of situation. I could be wrong, but we said this. If you watch the video I put out at the beginning of the second round of the playoffs, after we did our playoff live stream back in April, I put out the video in the second round of the playoffs. And after Tampa got eliminated by Florida in 5 games, I said, well, they're the one team that has the Stanley Cup numbers in the East. This was the same scenario that Tampa Bay, or that Colorado, the year they beat Tampa Bay, had. Remember, we said they entered the season that year with 124 playoff wins as the Avalanche, not counting their time as the Quebec Nordique. And we said, yeah, lock it up. Colorado's going to be in the Stanley Cup. And sure enough, they were, and they beat Tampa that year. And they got their 140th playoff win, mind you. Now Tampa Bay has the opportunity to do the same. And remember back in 2020, 2023, remember I said that at the end of the 2022 season when Florida got swept by Tampa in the second round. I said, yeah, Florida's going to be in the final next year because they're on 25 playoff wins. They're going to win 12 to get there. They're going to get their 37th win, like Stanley Cup is 37 and 136. It's always 136 and 37 with the Stanley Cups. Tampa's got the numbers in the East. And again, most people would probably point to Tampa, the Rangers, and Carolina as being the big three in the East, the way Colorado, Edmonton, and Dallas are the big three out west. So with that being said, the other thing to think about with Johnny Gaudreau is he died on the 29th, but he was born on the 13th, 813 as we would write it in the U.S. That's the Tampa Bay area code, or the Tampa area code, I should say. And I remember, I'd have to go back and watch my video, but I want to say the video I put out back in 2020 talking about why it was pretty much a lock Tampa would beat Dallas in the final. If this is the final this year, it would be a rematch of that. But they did a major area code ritual that year as well with Tampa, and it's got me wondering, could it be the case? You know, because I got to think if Tampa Bay's in the finals against Dallas, I'm not saying this is a Stanley Cup. I'm not saying this at all, and we're going to get to why. But I'm just saying, you know, these are things to keep an eye on, things to document as the season goes on. But Dallas is right now, they're 1-2 in Stanley Cups as the Stars because they won in 99 over Buffalo, lost in 2000 versus Jersey, and then lost to Tampa again in 2020. So I would think they're probably falling to 1-3. And Tampa, I would assume, is probably getting to 4-1 if that was the case. Dallas 41, the 13th prime. You know, Johnny Gaudreau wears the number 13. Dallas 13. I mean, that's likely what would happen. I'm not saying for sure this is the final. Carolina definitely has a narrative to win the Stanley Cup as well, and we're going to get to that. But it's just part of me just thinks, like, do I really do this again and just hesitate? Like I did in 2023 when Florida was shit the whole season, and then they squeak into the playoffs and they just dominate everybody en route to the final where they got put in their place by Vegas. But still, you know, it kind of makes me wonder. I mean, Tampa, they're playing like shit in November, but they had a great October where they went 7-3. I mean, it does kind of make you wonder. And again, last year, right, the 136, we talked about that from the date the Oilers were established to the date of the election was 136 days. Stanley Cup 136. Oilers got their 136th playoff loss when Florida had the same birthday as Donald Trump. So, you know, it does make me wonder if they're going to just continue to keep it in Tampa, right? I did notice that Hillsborough County, where Tampa is, they did vote Republican this year, or supposedly they did. You know, usually these urban counties always vote Democrat, so it is kind of interesting. Trump won it. You know, could that be an omen maybe? Obviously Florida's a red state, but it does kind of make me wonder if there's something more to that. We have to definitely keep an eye on Trump and what they're doing with the NHL, because we know this past year was all synced up with the election. And it will be the 2025 Stanley Cup as well. And I know Winnipeg has the connection to that number. Winnipeg is 97, the 25th prime. Tampa Bay is 25 in the most pure cipher. I got to keep an eye on the Buccaneers, too, and see what the Buccaneers are doing. But do the Buccaneers play the Cowboys this year? That might be something worth looking into, if that's the case. Do they? Let's just see real quick. Let's want to see if that's the case. Because the Cowboys are shit. We know that. Maybe that's how they reward. They do. All right, December 22nd. I gotta think more about that. All right. But the thing about the NHL season as well is this is the 108th season of the NHL, which is the 79th composite number. And Tampa Bay, of course, is 79 as well. So it does make you wonder about that. Stars again as the Dallas Stars, 128 wins. If they made the final, it would be 140. It will be their 37th year in the playoffs too. Stanley Cup 37 doesn't necessarily mean they got to be there, but yeah, Tampa got the 124, so it's possible. The other one too to keep an eye on is definitely the Carolina Hurricanes. Where are they at? The Hurricanes, right? If they won the Cup, they'd have 113 wins. I know Dallas has won 13, or Dallas won 13. Of course, it's the Hurricanes' 27th season since relocating from Hartford. They were the Hartford Whalers. Now they're the Carolina Hurricanes, right? Dallas Stars is 27. Remember in the 100. Remember they were in the Stanley Cup against Tampa in the 103rd season of the NHL, the 27th prime number. Remember the Stars and Lightning last played prior to the Stanley Cup on the 27th day of the year. Joe Nieuwendyk, who won the Conn Smythe Trophy the only year the Stars won the Stanley Cup, was the 27th pick of the draft. It's always 27 with Dallas. Hurricanes in their 27th season. And one of the things interesting about it, too, is if you look at the Lightning, like you say, they've looked like shit in November. They're 0-3-1. It kind of makes me wonder, is this when the streak ends? Do the Lightning beat the Jets? Is that when the streak ends on both sides? A lot of times that's what happens. Not even looking at gematria, just a lot of times one team's on a long losing streak, another on a long winning streak. That team has them at home. They usually win. So we'll see if Tampa Bay takes this game or not. But one thing to think about with the NHL season, right? October 12th, Tampa was one of the cities that got rocked with a hurricane. And how often do we see this? Cities where there's a massive shooting or a city just happens to get wiped out with a hurricane. Remember the last time? Remember when Hurricane Katrina wiped out the Gulf Coast in 2005? That was the worst storm of the 21st century in the United States. And who won the next Stanley Cup? The Carolina Hurricanes. And look at the Lightning, right? This game gets postponed on October 12th because of Hurricane Milton. And they just happen to be playing the Carolina Hurricanes, the Lightning. I mean, it's like people don't get the jokes. They don't get the obvious mockery. How many times do the Lightning and Hurricanes play a year? Not that many, right? They play the first 2 games of the season. First one's in Carolina. Tampa's got 41 home games. How many of them are against Carolina? 1, maybe 2? I mean, I don't even know when they play them next, So it's we'll have to keep an eye on when this day. The makeup date's going to be synced up with the gematria of Hurricane Milton. So just simply take that gematria, look at what the potential points totals are or the win totals. I guarantee that'll be an easy call whenever they announce it. But those are my thoughts. That's kind of where I am with the Stanley Cup right now. I've been doing a lot more with football right now. We've been pretty much having a lot of success in the NFL right now. I mean, obviously, you guys saw the bet slip of almost $4,000 the other week. It was about another almost $1,500 this week again. So, been off to a good start in the NFL. I'm just focusing on that, but I haven't forgot about the NHL. So, and in light of Johnny Gaudreau and his death as well, remember he is an American, and we got that Four Nations. The Four Nations tournament coming up in January or February, whenever that is. So the U.S. has a pretty stacked roster, and we'll talk a little bit more about it probably on Patreon when we get near that time. But I will leave it there, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Until next time.